Hi, I'm Father Chuck Peak, rector in the interim of St. Mark's on the Campus, the Episcopal Church in Lincoln, Nebraska. We're actually sitting in the student lounge of this church. We're right across the street from the University of Nebraska. And out in the courtyard, even as we're sitting here, we're watching students preparing for a service of worship. The title of this episode in the Big Red Doors series, our teaching series on video, is Sanctuary. We've spoken before in this series about how the big red doors at St. Mark's on the Campus, or any church, signify sanctuary. The idea stems from a time when churches literally served as sanctuaries where civil authorities, often at least in the eyes of the U.S. Constitution, illegitimate authorities, dared not pursue their victims. And some churches still offer that kind of sanctuary. But then, too, in church architecture, the word sanctuary may denote the whole of the worship space, as it does for many Protestants, or that part of the worship space where the altar is placed, as it is in more Catholic traditions. These meanings of sanctuary are all true, but they miss an important reality, and I would call it a psychological reality. Let's take two different cases. One, an individual with a pretty strong commitment to her or his church. But due to many factors in life, that commitment ebbs and flows, grows less, grows greater, due in part to what else is going on in that individual's life, or in their jobs, or in their family, or in their community. My family knew a man who postponed a run for the United States Senate because he had already committed to being his parish's senior warden, his chief lay leader. And yet when he ran again and was elected, and we visited him in Washington, he couldn't tell us where the Senate chapel was to be found. Different times and conditions in his life. You may be charged with straightening up the prayer books and hymnals in the pew after they've been used, and you may be very committed to that. Still, you don't want to miss your daughter's wedding reception because you stayed behind to straighten up the church. Our commitments take place within the context of our lives, where they sometimes find themselves strengthened for service and sometimes in need of a little breathing room. But here's the second case. Once a commitment to church, to faith, came almost as something that, as one boy described it, runs in the family. For many then and more today, church and faith are not part of our family heritage. If we come to church or to faith, we come later. And what would prompt us to come at all? I'm from a good middle-class family, a family with reputation and resources. Let's say I graduate from college, get a good job, makes lots of money. Let's say I'm happily married, my wife and I have two lovely, precocious children. We are all healthy, well-adjusted, highly thought of by other people. Sorry, but I'm not likely to somehow think I ought to get a faith life or go to church. Take time away from all the work and play that our income and status allow us to enjoy. So who shows up at the church door one day? Someone even trying to pretend that this describes them? Maybe it did once, until the good job was lost when a company bought another company out. Maybe it did before something as yet unidentified begins to disturb one of the children's health or happiness. Maybe it did before a series of compromises at work began to weigh too heavily on the family conscience. Maybe it did before the alcohol consumption of our social life began to get out of hand. Maybe before the affair or the divorce or the beginning of living unhappily ever after set in. Or maybe the description never really fit. No good, fulfilling job. No children that are especially precocious. Income that seldom catches up with the bills. The car was repossessed. Life can indeed be a school of hard knocks. And hard knocks can sometimes drive us. And sometimes, if we're lucky, it drives us to our knees. To the need for hope, for understanding, for help. To thinking maybe the neighbors, not so different from us, must have something going for them that we don't, because they seem somehow happier, somehow less disturbed, somehow more at peace, somehow more involved, in something we call faith. So one day they come through, or are brought through, the red doors. Symbolic red doors are real red doors. They come wounded. They stay long enough to be healed. And now, glad they can laugh again, but never forgetting their tears, they can reach out to comfort and heal others. This is why the church is often called a hospital for sinners, not a holiday inn for saints. Either way, coming in the red doors for help, or going back out having been helped and now strengthened to offer help, sanctuary means there is a place for you in God's church and God's love. Thanks for joining us for another episode of Big Red Door.